Hey, listeners, ready to transform your sleep? Cozy Earth is all about lasting luxury and comfort. Their bamboo sheets have been called the world's softest sheets, cooling, moisture wicking, and unbelievably soft. And I can tell you they get better with every wash. And they have a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty.
But it doesn't stop there. They have bath, sleepwear, loungewears, and even skincare. Free shipping on orders of $50 or more.
Make sure you go to cozyearth.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout to save 21% off. You can find all of this in the show notes. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William.
And I'm Kat.
That makes this Info on the Go.
Feeding your curiosity wherever you go.
Have you ever heard of the term digital dementia before we started this episode?
No.
Yeah, neither had I, to be honest with you. And this was sent to me by a friend of mine. Let's explore this controversial idea of digital dementia, separating fact from, fear.
Where we can examine what modern research says about memory, attention, learning, smartphones, AI, and whether our growing dependence on technology is changing how our brains function.
Sounds like it's going to be a fun-filled, packed episode.
Indeed.
I don't think I'm going to be able to make very many jokes on this one, other than my attention span is lower than that of a goldfish.
Same.
So before we get started, imagine just for one moment, you walk into a grocery store, you stop in the middle of the store because you've completely forgotten what you came for.
Does that ever happen to anyone else? Because it sure happens to me.
It happens to me all the time, and I put the list on my phone, but if I didn't have my phone, yeah, I'd have to go back home.
Yeah.
And my wife would be like, "Where's the milk, the bread, and the other stuff?"
You're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's what I was supposed to get.
But at this moment, you realize you can't even remember a single phone number, not even your spouse's phone number or significant other, because, well, your phone has done the thinking for you for years. Without GPS, you'd struggle to find your best friend's house, even though you've been there a couple of dozen times. Someone asked who starred in a movie you watched just last week, and instead of searching your memory, your first instinct is to reach for your phone and look it up.
Well, I'm pretty good with an internal GPS, so I could at least find, if I could find my way to a highway, I could find my way anywhere. I could figure it out. But other than that, all of those definitely check all my other boxes.
No, I need if it's places I go on the regular, yeah, I got it. Unlike my dad, one time over and done, go there 100 times. Me, I got to use my GPS at least 4 or 5, maybe 6. I don't know.
Yeah, the first few times for sure. So anyway, these moments have become so common that many of us barely think about them anymore. But they raise an interesting question. Are our brains actually getting weaker, or are they simply adapting to a world where nearly every piece of information is available instantly with just a few taps on a screen?
I think let's explore in this episode one of neuroscience's most fascinating and controversial ideas: digital dementia. Is it really a genuine concern or just one of those modern day scares? I think Kat and I, we are really going to try to figure out where the term came from. We're going to try to examine what researchers really mean by it. And we'll take a look at the evidence on both sides of the debate. And I say we'll even explore some of what smartphones actually do to our memory, whether social media is affecting our attention spans, and how AI tools like ChatGPT may change the way we learn and think, and most importantly, kind of discuss practical ways to keep our minds sharp without giving up the technology that we all love so much. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right, you want to start us off?
Sounds good. The term digital dementia first entered the public conversation in 2012 when German neuroscientist and psychiatrist Dr. Manfred Spitzer published his book, Digital Dementia. The title alone was enough to grab headlines around the world. It sounded alarming, suggesting that our smartphones, tablets, and computers might actually be causing a form of dementia. News outlets quickly picked up the story, and it sparked debates among parents, educators, psychologists, and technology experts alike. Was the digital age quietly changing our brains for the worse, or was it simply another example of fear surrounding a new technology?
He really argued that increasing dependence on digital devices was causing us to exercise our brains less. He suggested that we consistently rely on smartphones to remember phone numbers, GPS to navigate for us, search engines to answer every question, and digital calendars to keep track of our schedules, birthdays, and, you know, in other words, we were just outsourcing many of our mental tasks that previous generations performed themselves. According to his theory, this over reliance could gradually weaken important cognitive abilities such as memory, concentration, critical thinking, and even our capacity to learn new information. In essence, he believed that the brain is much like a muscle. The less we challenge it, the weaker it may become over time.
I do have a storm over me, so if you hear thunderclaps, that's why. But okay. So, however, the phrase digital dementia has also drawn significant criticism, especially from researchers and medical professionals. One important point to understand is that digital dementia is not the same thing as Alzheimer's disease or other forms of clinical dementia. Dementia is a medical condition involving progressive damage to brain function caused by diseases that affect the brain. Digital dementia, on the other hand, is not an officially recognized medical diagnosis. No doctor can diagnose someone with digital dementia, and you won't find it listed as a disease in major medical classification systems. Instead, the term is used to describe the possibility that excessive dependence on digital technology may contribute to reduced cognitive performance in certain areas, particularly memory, attention, and learning.
So digital dementia is not recognized, okay? PSA right here. We're just going to dive into the term. This distinction, it's important because it shifts the conversation away from disease and more toward behavior. If someone struggles to remember phone numbers because they've stored every contact to their smartphone, that does not necessarily mean their brain has been damaged. It may simply mean they've adapted to a world where remembering that information is no longer necessary. Likewise, relying on GPS instead of memorizing street names doesn't prove we become less intelligent. It may simply reflect a different way of solving problems.
This brings us to the central question at the heart of this episode, and one that scientists are still trying to answer. Is technology actually harming our brains, or is it simply changing the way our brains work? Throughout history, every major technological innovation, from writing and printed books to calculators and computers, has changed how humans think and store information. Some experts believe smartphones and artificial intelligence represents the next stage of that evolution. Others worry that the speed, convenience, and constant availability of digital technology may come with unintended consequences that we're only beginning to understand.
The truth is that the evidence is far more nuanced than the headlines suggest. Some studies have found links between heavy technology use and reduced attention, poor memory performance, or increased distraction, while other studies they suggest that technology can improve learning, expand access to information, and even strengthen certain cognitive skills when used thoughtfully, right?
Mhm.
As we'll see throughout this episode that Kat and I are going to do, the real story isn't as simple as declaring technology either good or bad. It's about understanding how our brains adapt, what habits help keep them healthy, and how we can enjoy the benefits of technology without allowing it to do all of our thinking for us. If you're like me, I don't even remember birthdays anymore. It's in my phone. It sends me a notification like 2 days before.
Yeah, same.
Oh, except for my wife. I love you, honey. I remember your birthday. I promise I do.
Well, I'd hope so. Otherwise, you'd be sleeping on the couch or something.
any of the children that are listening to this episode, they already know that probably happens more times than not anyway.
Ah, well, anyway, before we can understand whether technology is changing our brains, we first need to understand how memory works naturally. Human memory is not a perfect recording system that stores every experience exactly as it happened. Instead, memory is a complex and constantly changing process that allows us to learn, adapt, make decisions, and navigate the world around us. Our brains are designed to remember what is important, useful, or meaningful while allowing less important information to fade away.
One of the biggest misconceptions about memory is that forgetting is a sign that something is starting to go wrong. But in reality, forgetting is a normal and necessary part of how our brains function. Imagine trying to remember every conversation you've ever had, every meal you've ever eaten, every street you've ever walked down or driven down, every advertisement you've ever seen. The amount of information would be overwhelming. The brain has to filter information consistently, keeping what really matters and letting other things go that really don't matter. I can remember almost every commercial from my childhood.
Yeah.
Pardon me, would you happen to have any Grey Poupon?
No, see, mine's freecreditreport.com commercials. Education Connection.
How about Schoolhouse Rock?
Oh, okay, yes.
I remember all those. I'm just a bill.
Well, I
And
got the conjunction junction. What's your function?
yeah, and then let's see, Where's the Beef? I remember that one with the clown riding around in the background. Experian.
Mhm.
Oh, what was the other one with the little babies that started talking?
Oh,
E-Trade.
oh,
E-Trade.
yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
To understand memory, scientists often divide it into several different types. The first is short term memory, which is the ability to hold a small amount of information for a brief period of time. For example, remembering a phone number long enough to dial it or holding a person's name in your mind immediately after being introduced. Short term memory is limited, and without additional processing information, can disappear within seconds.
closely connected to short-term memory is working memory. Working memory is the mental space where we temporarily hold and manipulate information while we use it. It allows us to follow directions, solve problems, have conversations, and make decisions. So, for example, when you're cooking a recipe, your working memory, well, it helps you remember the next few steps while also adjusting based on what you see and experience. Because working memory has a limited capacity, distractions, well, they can quickly interfere with our ability to think clearly and complete the task.
The next major category is long term memory, which allows us to store information for much longer periods, sometimes for an entire lifetime. Long term memory includes both personal experiences and general knowledge. Within long term memory, scientists often separate memories into different categories, including episodic memory and semantic memory.
So, episodic memory is the memory of personal experiences and events. It allows you to remember your first day of school, a family vacation, a favorite birthday, or a conversation you had years ago. These memories are connected to, well, certain moments in your life and often include details such as where you were, who was there, and how you felt, or the smell of crayons on your first day of school.
Or that one time you embarrassed yourself and you can't ever live it down and you just hope other people forgot. Semantic memory, on the other hand, is our memory for facts, information, and knowledge about the world. It includes things like knowing that Paris is the capital of France, understanding how gravity works, or remembering the meaning of a word. Unlike episodic memories, semantic memories are not tied to a specific personal experience.
But how do these memories actually form? Creating lasting memory requires several important steps, beginning with attention. If we are distracted or not fully engaged, our brains often do not store the information effectively. This is one reason why constantly switching between apps, messages, and notifications can make it harder to remember what we are doing. So the brain has to focus on information before it can begin to process what it's actually storing.
Another key factor is repetition. Repeated exposure strengthens the connections between brain cells, making information easier to recall. This is why practicing a skill, reviewing information, or repeating something over time helps move it from temporary memory into long term storage. Learning a language, playing an instrument, or studying for an exam all rely on repetition to strengthen memory pathways.
Emotion, because it really plays a powerful role in memory. Experiences connected to strong emotions are often remembered more clearly because the brain, well, it gives priority to the information because it seems important for survival or future decisions. This is why people often remember major life events, frightening moments or deeply meaningful experiences in great detail.
And finally, sleep is one of the most important parts of memory formation. While we sleep, the brain processes and organizes information gathered throughout the day. This process, known as memory consolidation, helps transform new experiences into lasting memories. Poor sleep can make it harder to learn, concentrate, and remember information.
I'm not sleeping correctly. Did you put sleep on the shopping list?
Probably. I probably
Okay,
did.
we need to do that now. So understanding these basic principles of memory, well, it helps us better examine the role of technology. When people worry about digital dementia, one of the main concerns is that we may be relying on devices so heavily that we are giving our brains fewer opportunities to practice, well, remembering.
This idea is known as cognitive offloading, which means using outside tools to store information instead of keeping it entirely in your own mind. But cognitive offloading is not a new behavior created by smartphones. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years.
The invention of writing, well, it was one of the earliest examples of cognitive offloading. Before writing, people had to rely heavily on memory to, well, preserve history, tradition, and important knowledge. Writing, well, it allowed humans to store information outside the brain and pass it on to the next generation.
We also use everyday tools to reduce the mental burden of remembering. Calendars help us track appointments and important dates. Shopping lists allow us to remember what we need at the store. Maps help us navigate unfamiliar places. Libraries preserve enormous amounts of human knowledge that no single person could possibly memorize.
So, in many ways, the technology has always been a memory tool. The difference today is the speed and scale of that assistance. A smartphone can store thousands of contacts, provide instant answers to nearly any question you have, or guide you anywhere in the world you want to go. So the question is not whether humans should use tools to support memory, because we really always have. The more important question is whether we are using these tools to enhance our thinking, or are we replacing the mental processes that really help our brains be active?
And as we continue exploring digital dementia, the key issue is not simply that technology stores information for us. The real question is what happens when we stop practicing certain mental skills because we no longer feel the need to use them. Understanding how memory works gives us the foundation to examine whether our digital habits are helping our brains adapt or causing us to lose abilities we still need.
Kat, I say before we continue any further, let's take our break. So now that we're back, if you've ever,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
William, I know how you love matcha tea with coconut milk.
yeah, it's clean energy without a crash.
Then you'll love Mantra Matcha. They offer super premium ceremonial matcha and 6 superfood infused flavors made from the finest, youngest tea leaves for a naturally sweet, ultra smooth taste.
With each flavor, it's infused with powerful superfoods like cacao, ginger, and goji berries. And they also have those classic favorites like banana cacao, strawberry lemon, cinnamon goji berry, plus superfood berry, ginger beet, and rosehip dragon fruit. It's organic, non GMO, gluten free with 0 grams of sugar. You can enjoy it like me, or maybe hot or in a smoothie like Cat. Every purchase helps provide meals to kids through No Kid Hungry.
It's at mantramatcha.com. Get 15% off using our code INFOGO at checkout. Both links are in the show notes.
Hey, everybody, we want to tell you about strong coffee. Every morning it starts with a choice. You can settle for just coffee, or you can rise up with strong coffee. And it's the world's strongest cup of joe. Strong isn't just a drink, it's a movement. It stands for striving to reach our natural greatness.
It's born from one simple need: to be better. They rebuilt coffee from the ground up, infusing organic coffee with collagen, protein, nootropics, and functional ingredients that fuel your body and sharpen your mind. No crash, no compromises, just clean energy, focus, and flavor that fires you up.
Yeah, so whether you're chasing kids, chasing goals, or chasing greatness, don't just do it with coffee, do it with strong coffee. And our listeners can save 20% off just by using our code INFOGO at checkout. Hey, if you're looking for your favorite band or sports team or TV show, check out Old Glory. They've been in operation since 1969 and they have over 300,000 items. They have from the Beatles all the way to Metallica, NFL, NBA. It really doesn't matter what you're looking for. They have tees, hoodies, hats, gifts, everything a true fan could ever want. And it's family owned and operated. They have fast shipping, free standard delivery on every order. And you know what? Our listeners get a 15% off at checkout using our code INFOGO. You can find the link in the show notes. Joke that your smartphone has become your second brain. Well, you're not far from the truth. In just a couple of decades, smartphones have evolved from simple communication devices into portable memory banks that, well, many of us carry everywhere we go. They don't just help you remember things, they often remember everything for you: phone numbers, birthdays, passwords, appointments, directions, grocery list, even where you parked your car. They're all stored digitally. They're ready to be retrieved within seconds. So, for many people, life without a smartphone would feel like losing a significant portion of their memory.
Now, think about how different daily life was just a generation ago. Most adults could recite dozens of phone numbers from memory. Children memorized the numbers of their parents, grandparents, and close friends. People carried paper maps or learned the streets of their hometown through repeated travel. Calendars hung on kitchen walls, and shopping lists were scribbled on scraps of paper. Today, many of those mental tasks have quietly shifted to our phones. It's incredibly convenient, but it also raises an interesting question. If our devices remember everything for us, what happens to the parts of our brains that used to perform those tasks?
Researchers have been studying this phenomenon for years. And one of the most interesting discoveries is something known as the Google effect, sometimes called digital amnesia. The idea was first described by researchers who found that when people know information can be easily found online, they are less likely to remember that information for themselves. Instead, they tend to remember where they can find it. In other words, our brains may be shifting from storing facts to storing pathways that lead to those facts.
And now imagine someone asks, who was the first person to walk on the moon? Years ago, you might have searched your memory for the answer. Today, people immediately think, I'll just Google it. The brain has learned that remembering the exact fact is less important because the information is always available. It's similar to knowing which shelf a book is on in a library rather than memorizing every page inside it.
At first glance, that might sound like a bad thing, but from the brain's perspective, it can actually be an effective strategy because our brains have limited resources and they consistently decide what information deserves long term storage. If information is always instantly accessible, the brain may determine that it's more useful to remember how to retrieve it than to memorize it permanently. This doesn't necessarily mean we're becoming less intelligent. It may simply mean we're adapting to a world with nearly unlimited access to information. Google it.
One area where researchers have raised concerns is navigation. So, before GPS became common, people often developed detailed mental maps of the places they traveled. They paid attention to landmarks, street names, distances, and directions. This process relied heavily on a part of the brain called the hippocampus, a structure that plays a crucial role in forming memories and navigating through space.
One of the most famous studies involving the hippocampus, well, it looked at London taxi drivers. Before earning their license, these drivers had to memorize thousands of streets and landmarks in demanding process known as the knowledge. Brain imaging studies found that experienced taxi drivers often had larger or more developed posterior hippocampi than the average person. And this really suggested that years of intensive navigation, well, it really strengthened the brain's regions that involved spatial memory,
Now, compare that with someone who relies on GPS for nearly every trip,
like me.
even routes they've driven dozens of times. Navigation apps tell us exactly when to turn, how long it'll take, and even warn us about traffic ahead. While this convenience is remarkable, some researchers wonder whether constantly following turn by turn directions reduces our need to build mental maps of our surroundings. Several studies suggest that heavy GPS users may rely less on their own spatial memory because the technology is doing much of the work for them. However, scientists are still investigating how significant these effects are and whether they lead to lasting brain changes.
Of course, outsourcing memory isn't always a negative thing. In fact, it's often one of the reasons why us humans have been so successful as a species. By letting technology handle routine tasks, we free up mental energy for complex thinking. Instead of remembering dozens of passwords or appointment times and dates, we can focus on solving problems, being creative, learning new skills, or spending time with family and friends. Digital tools, they can reduce stress, improve organization, and help us accomplish far more than what we could have if we had to try to remember every little detail ourselves.
On the other hand, there may be a trade off. When we stop actively recalling information, we also stop exercising the mental processes involved in remembering it. Just as muscles become weaker when they aren't used regularly, some researchers believe certain memory skills may become less efficient if we constantly rely on technology instead of our own recall. Active recall, forcing yourself to remember something without immediately looking it up, is one of the most powerful ways to strengthen memory. If we never give our brains that opportunity, we may become increasingly dependent on our devices.
So, is outsourcing memory good or bad? The answer, like many things in neuroscience, is that it's probably both. Smartphones have become extraordinary tools that make our lives easier, safer, and more productive. They allow us to carry on an incredible amount of information in our pockets and access knowledge almost instantly. But the convenience they provide also encourages us to use certain memory skills less, well, than previous generations had to before us.
The real issue may not be that smartphones are replacing our memories, but that they're changing which kinds of memories we choose to keep. Rather than memorizing facts, directions, and phone numbers, we're increasingly remembering where to find information instead. Whether that's a sign of cognitive decline or simply the next step in human adaptation, that's one of the biggest questions researchers continue to explore.
While much of the conversation around digital dementia focuses on memory, many neuroscientists believe the bigger issue may actually be attention. After all, memory depends on attention. If you never truly pay attention to something in the first place, your brain has very little chance of, well, storing that lasting memory. You can't remember what you never fully noticed.
Think about how often you're interrupted during a typical day. You're reading an article when your phone vibrates with a text message. While answering that text, an email notification appears. Before you've finished reading the email, a social media alert pops up, followed by a news headline, a weather update, or a reminder from your calendar. By the time you've dealt with all those interruptions, it can be surprisingly difficult to remember what you were doing just a few minutes earlier.
Wait, what were we doing?
Right.
So, researchers have found that these constant interruptions don't simply waste a few seconds here and there. Every time our attention is pulled away from a task, the brain has to reorient itself when we return from that task. So, the process requires mental effort, right? Even brief interruptions can increase the time it takes to finish a task, reduce comprehension, and make it more likely that we'll make mistakes. While distractions may seem insignificant on its own, dozens or hundreds of these interruptions throughout the day, they can add up to a noticeable mental burden.
This brings us to one of the biggest myths about modern productivity: multitasking. Many people pride themselves on being excellent multitaskers. We answer emails while watching television, check social media during meetings, listen to podcasts while reading articles, or respond to text messages while trying to complete work. It feels productive because we're doing several things at once. But neuroscience tells a different story.
For most complex tasks, the brain doesn't actually perform them simultaneously. Instead, it rapidly switches its attention back and forth between activities. This process is known as task switching. And while it happens so quickly that we often don't really notice it, each switch, well, it comes with a small cognitive cost. The brain has to stop one train of thought, load another into working memory, and then return to the original task later. These repeated transitions consume mental energy.
And studies consistently show that frequent task switching can slow thinking, increase errors, and leave us feeling mentally exhausted. Imagine trying to read a book while someone changes the television channel every 30 seconds. You might eventually finish the chapter, but it would take longer, require more effort, and you'd probably remember much less of what you read.
Absolutely.
I don't even have to have a TV on. My brain does that for me.
This is especially important because working memory, the part of the brain that temporarily holds and manipulates information, has limited capacity. Every interruption competes for those limited mental resources. When we overload working memory, it becomes harder to think deeply, solve problems, and form lasting memories.
Social media platforms have added another layer to this challenge. Unlike older forms of entertainment, today's social media apps are carefully designed to keep our attention for as long as possible. Their algorithms continuously analyze what captures our interest and service a nearly endless stream of new content. Every swipe brings another video, another photo, another headline, another joke, another emotional story. The experience is built around constant novelty.
So, our brains are naturally attracted to novelty because throughout human evolution, noticing something new often had survival value. Modern technology takes advantage of that tendency. Every unexpected notification, like, comment, or interesting video, it can trigger the release of dopamine, one of the brain's reward relative neurotransmitters. Dopamine doesn't simply make us feel good, it also motivates us to keep seeking the next rewarding experience. That's one reason why many people intend to spend 5 minutes on social media or an hour on a video game, but then they find themselves still scrolling 30 to 40 minutes later or playing 3 hours later and going, what happened to the day?
Now, this behavior has become so common that researchers have coined a new term for it: infinite scrolling. Unlike a newspaper or a book, which has a natural stopping point, many apps never truly end. There's always another post waiting below the one you're reading or watching. Without clear stopping cues, it's easy to lose track of time and remain engaged far longer than intended.
Some scientists have wondered whether this constant exposure to rapidly changing information is affecting our ability to concentrate on longer, more demanding tasks. If we're consistently training our brains to expect new content every few seconds, could that make it harder to read a article that's a little long or focus during a lecture or work on a challenging project without really becoming distracted?
The research so far offers an interesting but cautious picture. Several studies have found that people who frequently engage in heavy media multitasking often perform worse on certain tests of sustained attention and are more easily distracted by irrelevant information. Other research has linked excessive social media use with shorter periods of focused attention, particularly when notifications are frequent or devices remain within easy reach.
However, scientists are careful not to overstate these findings because most studies show correlations, not direct proof that social media causes lasting attention problems. It's possible that people who are naturally more distractible are also more likely to use multiple forms of media at the same time. Researchers are still working to really untangle the cause and effect here.
Now, what most experts do agree on is that our environment matters. The more interruptions, notifications, and competing demands we face, the more difficult it becomes to maintain deep, sustained focus. And because attention is the first step in creating memories, anything that weakens our ability to focus can also affect how well we learn and remember.
Perhaps the biggest lesson isn't that social media is inherently harmful, but that our brains were never really designed to process a constant stream of competing information every waking hour. Attention is one of our most valuable cognitive resources, and like any valuable resource, it can be fragmented if we're not really careful about how we use or spend it. Kat, I say before we get into the children and teens that are developing brains, I say I really need to go get a Coke.
We'll get a Pepsi.
We could agree on a Coke every once in a while, right?
I'll take cherry or vanilla Coke.
Cherry Coke. Okay, we can agree on that. We'll be right back.
Now that we're back, when researchers talk about
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello from www.designerminidoodles.com, home of the best quality mini, micro mini, and toy sized golden doodle puppies, as well as miniature Bernedoodle puppies and miniature Cavapoo puppies in the United States. Here at Designer Mini Doodles, we have a nanny, and we are able to fly our puppies anywhere in the country, allowing you to get some of the best bloodlines from top quality breeding program in the United States.
the possible effects of digital technology on the brain, one group receives more attention than any other: children and teens. That's because their brains are still under construction. Unlike adult brains, which are relatively stable, young brains are constantly building new connections, strengthening important pathways, and pruning away those that aren't used. The experiences children have during these years can play a significant role in shaping how they think, learn, and interact with the world.
One of the most important areas that's still developing is known as executive function. This includes skills like planning, problem solving, paying attention, controlling impulses, managing emotions, and switching between tasks effectively. Executive function is what really helps children resist distractions, finish homework before playing video games, or think through the consequences of a decision. These abilities continue developing well into a person's 20s, making childhood and adolescence especially important years for building healthy habits. Learning is also closely tied to interaction and experience. Young children learn language not simply by hearing words, but by engaging in conversations, asking questions, reading facial expressions, and responding to other people. That's why many child development experts emphasize that screen time should never completely replace real world interactions with parents, teachers, siblings, and friends.
When it comes to screen time, researchers have learned that it's not just how much time children spend with screens that matters, it's how they're using them. Watching hours of mindless videos is very different from participating in an interactive educational lesson, creating digital art, learning to code, or video chatting with grandparents. In other words, quality often matters just as much as quantity.
Some studies have suggested that excessive passive screen use, especially in very young children, may be associated with slower language development and reduced attention. One possible reason is that every hour spent passively watching a screen, well, it may be an hour not spent talking, reading, exploring, or playing with other children. These real world experiences, well, they're essential for developing communication and social skills.
Schools have also embraced technology in ways that would have seemed unimaginable just a few decades ago. Tablets, laptops, online learning platforms, and educational apps can make lessons more engaging and give students access to incredible resources. Teachers can personalize instruction, students can collaborate across great distances, and information is available almost instantly.
But technology in the classroom also comes with challenges. A device that provides access to educational materials, well, it can also provide games, social media, and countless distractions. Some educators worry that students, well, they may become more dependent on quick online answers instead of really developing deeper problem solving and critical thinking skills. Finding the right balance between using technology as a learning tool and avoiding unnecessary distractions remains an ongoing challenge for schools around the world.
And one of the most common questions parents ask is, how much screen time is too much? Unfortunately, there isn't a single number that fits every child. Organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics have moved away from strict hourly limits for older children and instead encourage families to focus on healthy habits. Is the child getting enough sleep? Are they physically active? Are they spending time with family and friends? Are screens interfering with schoolwork or replacing important face to face interactions? If those areas are healthy, occasional recreational screen time is generally less concerning.
So, the growing consensus among experts is that technology itself isn't the enemy. Instead, the goal is to really help children develop a balanced relationship with technology. Screens can be powerful tools for learning, creativity, and communication, but they shouldn't replace conversations or outdoor play, reading, curiosity, or many of the real world experiences that really help young brains grow strong?
Mhm. Now, so far we focused on how technology might directly influence memory and attention, but some of the biggest effects on our brains may actually be indirect. Technology doesn't just change how we think, it can also affect how well we sleep, how much stress we experience, and how mentally exhausted we feel by the end of the day. These factors play a major role in keeping our brains healthy and functioning at their best.
I think let's start with the sleep because many of us have a bedtime routine that looks something like this. We climb into bed, we turn off the lights, and we spend just a few minutes checking social media, watching a video, answering an email or a text. But before we know it, half an hour or even an hour or two has passed. One reason for this is blue light emitted by the screens on our phones, tablets, computers because blue light can interfere with the production of melatonin. This is really the hormone that helps regulate our natural sleep cycle. When melatonin production is delayed, falling asleep can become more difficult, especially if you're using screens right before bedtime.
Now, sleep is far more than simply resting the body. It's one of the most important times for the brain, too. While we sleep, our brains organize the information we've gathered throughout the day, strengthen important memories, and remove unnecessary information. Scientists call this process memory consolidation, and it's essential for learning. If you've ever stayed up all night studying only to struggle to remember the material the next day, you've experienced how critical sleep really is. Poor sleep doesn't just make us tired, it can reduce concentration, weaken memory, slow decision making, and negatively affect our mood.
Technology, it can also contribute to another modern challenge, information overload. Every day we have all these emails, text messages, breaking news alerts, social media updates, weather notification, advertisements. You get the picture? It
Mhm.
yeah, it's never ending. And the human brain has evolved to process information, but it didn't evolve to handle thousands of pieces of information competing for the same space in our brain. Sometimes it can feel as though there's simply no off switch.
This constant flow of information can lead to something psychologists call decision fatigue. Every choice we make, whether to answer an email now or later, click on a headline, respond to a notification, or decide what to watch next, uses a small amount of mental energy. Individually, these decisions seem trivial, but over the course of an entire day, they really add up. By evening, many people feel mentally drained, not because they've done physically demanding work, but because their brains have been making hundreds of small decisions since they woke up.
Yes, I can 100% agree with that. Another habit that's become increasingly common is doom scrolling. And the tendency to endlessly scroll through negative news or distressing social media posts, especially during times of crisis or uncertainty, our brains naturally pay more attention to potential threats than positive information. So, a survival instinct that helped our ancestors stay alive Unfortunately, modern technology can exploit this tendency by delivering an endless stream of alarming headlines and emotional stories. Spending long periods consuming this type of content has been linked to higher levels of stress and anxiety in many people, even when there's little that they can personally do about the events that they're reading about.
So, taken together, poor sleep, constant notifications, information overload, and chronic stress can leave us feeling mentally exhausted. That exhaustion doesn't necessarily mean our brains are being permanently damaged, but it can certainly make us feel less focused, less patient, more forgetful. But sometimes what we interpret as brain fog or poor memory may actually be the result of a tired brain that hasn't had enough quality sleep or enough quiet time to recover.
So the encouraging news is that these are also some of the easiest factors to improve. Getting enough sleep, setting limits on notifications, taking breaks from the constant flow of information, and, well, giving your brain time to rest can really have a positive impact on memory, attention, and overall mental well-being. Sometimes protecting your brain isn't about using less technology, it's about using it more intentionally.
And just when scientists were beginning to understand how smartphones and the internet were changing the way we think, another technological revolution arrived: artificial intelligence. Tools like ChatGPT and other AI assistants have opened an entirely new chapter in the discussion about digital dementia and the future of human cognition. Unlike search engines, which simply point us toward information, AI can summarize articles, answer complex questions, write essays, generate computer code, solve problems, and even help us create works of art. The question is no longer just whether technology changes what we remember, it's whether AI could change how we think.
And that's as of this recording. Millions of people use AI as, well, a kind of cognitive assistant. Students, well, they use it to explain difficult concepts or help them study for exams. Writers use it to overcome writer's block, organize ideas, or polish those drafts that they have. Researchers, well, they use it to summarize large amounts of information more quickly. Programmers ask it to write or debug code. Business professionals, well, they use it to draft emails, analyze data, or brainstorm solutions to problems. In many ways, AI is becoming another tool that really helps us be more efficient.
But this convenience also raises an important concern. If artificial intelligence is always available to provide answers, explanations, and solutions, will people gradually stop practicing the mental skills that make learning possible? If a student asks AI to write every paper, solve every math problem, or answer every homework question, are they actually gaining knowledge or simply completing assignments? Some educators worry that relying too heavily on AI could reduce opportunities to practical critical thinking, creativity, and independent problem solving.
Of course, this isn't the first time society has faced these kind of questions. When calculators became common in classrooms, many people feared that students would never learn mathematics. Why memorize multiplication tables if a calculator could produce the answer instantly? Yet, calculators didn't destroy math education. Instead, it changed it. Teachers still expect students to understand mathematical concepts, estimate answers, and recognize when a result doesn't make sense. Calculators, well, they just simply allowed people to spend less time on repetitive calculations and more time solving complex problems. I was in the generation of calculators were not allowed in math class.
I had calculators in later years, but then of course it was one of those, well, you're not just going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket everywhere. AI may follow a similar path. Used wisely, it has the potential to become an incredibly valuable learning partner rather than a replacement for learning itself. For example, AI can help generate ideas when you're staring at a blank page. It can explain a difficult scientific concept in simpler language, offer different perspectives on a historical event, or challenge your assumptions by presenting alternative viewpoints. It can even quiz you on material you've already studied, helping reinforce what you've learned.
The key difference here, it lies in how we use it. If AI becomes a shortcut that replaces curiosity, effort, or independent thinking, then it could weaken important cognitive skills over time. But if it's used to enhance learning, encourage deeper questions, and support creative thinking, it may actually help us strengthen our ability rather than diminish it. Much like a calculator, GPS, or AI is ultimately a tool. The outcome depends on whether we are using it to avoid thinking or using it to think more efficiently.
So, what does the future hold? Will AI make humanity smarter by giving us instant access to knowledge and helping us solve increasingly complex problems? Or will it make us more dependent on machines, gradually reducing our willingness to think through problems on our own? So, are we going to, is idiocracy or the Lorax or.
Aliens?
Right, right.
The honest answer is that we just really don't know. AI is evolving at an extraordinary pace, and researchers are only beginning to study its long-term effects on learning, memory, creativity, and critical thinking. What seems clear is that the relationship between humans and AI, well, it will continue to shape education, the workplace, everyday life for years to come. Perhaps the most important lesson is that AI works best when it complements human intelligence, not when it replaces it.
After everything we've discussed today, you might be wondering if the solution is just to simply unplug, to get rid of your smartphone, delete your social media accounts, or swear off AI altogether. Well, for most people, that's neither practical nor necessary. Technology has become deeply woven into our daily lives. It helps us communicate, work, learn, navigate, and stay connected with family and friends across the world. The goal isn't to abandon technology, it's to make sure we're using it intentionally instead of allowing it to use us.
You know, one of the easiest ways to keep your brain engaged is to practice remembering things on purpose. Every now and then, challenge yourself to memorize a few important phone numbers, and instead of really relying on your contact list in your phone, try navigating to a familiar destination without GPS. Go into the grocery store with a short shopping list. You know, one you've committed to in memory rather than checking your phone every few minutes. These small little exercises, they can really help your brain to actively retrieve information instead of automatically outsourcing it.
Reading is another powerful way to strengthen the mind. While there's nothing wrong with reading articles online, there's something unique about sitting down with a long form book or in depth magazine article. Longer reading sessions encourage sustained attention, deeper comprehension, and critical thinking in ways that short social media posts often do not. They train your brain to stay focused on a single idea rather than constantly jumping from one piece of information to the next. Does that the same for audiobooks? Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't think so. I think it's only if you're sitting down and challenging your mind to actually read those books. Learning new skills is equally important, whether it's studying a new language, listening to a good podcast, learning to play a musical instrument, taking up photography, gardening, working, cooking, whatever. Challenging your brain with unfamiliar tasks, it helps create new neural connections. Neuroscientists often refer to this ability as neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable capacity to adapt, recognize, and continue learning throughout life. Contrary to what many people believe, our brains remain capable of change well into old age. So don't write us old people off.
You got the ability to increase your neuroplasticity. And physical exercise. Oh, man, that's not my favorite subject. But it's another habit that benefits the brain just as much as the body. Regular activity increases blood flow to the brain, supports the growth of new brain cells, improves mood, and has been linked to better memory and a lower risk of cognitive decline later in life. Even something as simple as a daily walk can have measurable benefits for brain health.
So we've talked about the importance of sleep, and it's worth emphasizing it again. Protecting your sleep may be one of the most effective things you can do for your memory and attention. Try putting your phone away before bedtime. Limit that late night screen use. Give your brain, uninterrupted rest because it needs it to consolidate those memories and recover from the day's mental demands.
Now, that leads us to another simple but effective strategy: single tasking. Instead of trying to answer emails while watching television, checking social media, and carrying on a conversation, try giving one task your complete attention before moving on to the next. That's hard for me. But anyway, research consistently shows that people often perform better, make fewer mistakes, and feel less mentally drained when they focus on one activity at a time rather than constantly switching between tasks.
The real question is digital dementia real? And the answer is more complicated than a simple yes or no. Digital dementia is not a medical diagnosis, and there is no convincing evidence that smartphones or computers literally cause dementia in the clinical sense anyway. However, a growing body of research will it suggest that excessive dependence on technology, consistent distractions, poor sleep, chronic multitasking, and passive information consumption, it can influence memory, attention, learning, and overall cognitive performance.
As we wrap up this episode, we hope you've come away with a new perspective on one of the most interesting debates in modern neuroscience. Whether you believe technology is changing our brains for better or for worse, or somewhere in between, one thing is clear: the choices we make every day matter. So before you reach for your phone, the next time you have a question, try giving your brain a chance first, especially if it's something you know you've looked up before. See if you can remember that phone number, recall the name of that actor, or navigate to a familiar place without GPS. You might be surprised by what your mind is still capable of.
Basically, what we're telling you is exercise, physical exercise, mental exercise is just as important.
Indeed.
I thought this one was really interesting. I never heard of the term digital dementia before it was handed to me, and I mean, it's eye-opening, and at the same time, it's kind of concerning.
I've never heard it. I never heard a generalized term for it. So it's nice that there's, a kind of a term for it. And it's kind of nice to know that there is scientists looking into it, because my generation was just kind of thrown into it. We grew up with technology, if that makes any sense. So we're just kind of rolling with the punches here.
Well,
Uh,
my kids have evolved into Chat GPT. Some of them maybe not. I mean, some use it more than others, obviously. However, if it's used as a tool instead of a supplement, I believe it could help create deeper thinking. But I think if you're supplementing it, I could see where it could cause some serious problems. Well, if you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
if you'd like to support the show, you can do so at Patreon or take advantage of our sponsors. Those links are in the show notes.
And for a limited time, Kat and I have released our entire Patreon catalog entirely free. Go check it out. So, Kat and I want to say thank you for listening.
Whether you've been with us from day one or just tuning in, thank you.
Yep. And you can join the Facebook group at Info on the Go,
Over there, you can get to know us,
or just simply ask us a question.
but follow us wherever you get your podcast.
And send us some of that fan mail. But what we would really like for you to do is leave a review.
Please tell us if you hate us, if you love us, if we should keep going. I mean, we're probably going to keep going anyway, but
Tell us you love us. I mean, hey, if you don't, send us some fan mail.
yeah, I don't know, some weird picture you drew or something, just nothing crazy, okay? Keep it PG.
Did you hear that, kids? Send your math problems in and we'll solve them for you.
Sure, but don't tell us, don't tell,
No, I didn't say we would get it right. I just said we would solve it for you.
yeah, don't expect us to have all the right answers. We're not perfect.
No.
So leaving that review really does help others find us. You can also email William and myself directly at
Info on the go podcast at gmail.com.
and all of that is in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious. Hey, listen up. all of my workforce friends out there, whether you're ranchers, farmers, or you just need a pair of good leather gloves, look no further than Bare Knuckles, the best leather gloves ever made, featuring a patent design crafted for natural curve of the fingers. These gloves deliver a perfect fit, superior protection, and all-day comfort. Made from premium leather, right now get an exclusive 15% off, and you can find that at buybareknuckles.com, but make sure you use our code INFOGO at checkout. You can find that link in the show notes. Upgrade your hands, and remember, every purchase, well, it supports the show, so thank you.
If you love unforgettable treats, you've got to try Molly B's gourmet cookies. These aren't your average cookies. Molly B's brings bold, artisan crafted cookies straight to your pantry. We're talking chocolate, cherry, and amaretto and be cordial. Earl Grey, lavender, white chocolate, and lemon glaze in the tea. Even maple, bacon, whiskey, and white chocolate in the Boss Man. Founded by a single mom from Alaska, Molly Bees has become a national sensation. You get 10% off any product using our code INFOGO at mollybees.com. Find the link in the show notes.